Okay. Okay. Once I hit this button, we start. Okay, here we go. We're starting. If there was any chapter in the book of Deuteronomy that I wish I could skip, it would be this one. A lot of you are like, Jeff, we've hit some pretty heavy stuff, and this is the chapter you want to skip? Yep, this is the chapter I would want to skip. But we're not, and you're here. And if you're visiting, have fun. As one pastor said to the church, it was nice seeing you. All right, so we have a lot to deal with today, 68 verses. I am not going to cover all 68 verses because some of them are repetitive, or I will give you the references to them. But please do your best to follow along as we deal with this. So context, context, context. Again, Moses is about to let these people go into the promised land. He has been taking them through, reminding them of everything that has gone on, and he has been saying to them, as you go into the promised land, remember the covenants that you have made. Today, specifically, is the beginning on this section, which, by the way, follows all the way to the end of this idea versus blessings and curses. Blessings. Very simple, this idea that if you do the thing that God asks you to do, there is blessings. It is conditional. Do not think that it is not. It is conditional. Meaning, I have set my word before you. If you do my word, these are the blessings that come. Now, there's a mindset that we have that if we don't do the blessings of God, then what happens is just, well, we're just kind of left to chance to see what would happen. We're left to this place of well, you know, some good things might happen, some bad things might happen. That is not what this passage is going to say. There are curses. Curses. This is not curse words. These are curses. These are, if you go away from this, I will call things down upon you. That is a curse. And so in this, you have to understand that we have a God that is playing, honestly, not a game, but a reality that goes this way. This is how I've told you to live. If you do that, there are blessings. If you choose another way, it's not that it's just, well, oh, let's see how well you do. There are curses. And what happens is that in a lot of times when we get to passages like this, and I'm being honest, a lot of pastors just skip this stuff, which I wanted to do today, I'm being honest, because there's going to be some verbiage that some of you are going to go, wow, no one ever told me this. But it's here. Let's begin. And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. If you follow the commandments that I set before you today, he will. That's a blessing. He is going to set you up. He is going to raise you above the other nations. And by the way, there was a time when this happened for Israel. For a very short period of time, they kept their focus, they did what was right, and God blessed the snot out of them. He did. Short-lived. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. The big word here is if. If. Again, this is circumstantial. You will if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, and the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Folks, I kid you not. If you read the beginning of what happens in the book of Joshua, literally they could do. It was just like they planted seed, boom. They grew. They had 2 sheep, bam. They got sheep everywhere, right? People are having kids left and right. He fulfilled his blessings. I mean, people could go no wrong. I mean, it's just like they just did it, bam, right? Everybody won the lottery. Woohoo! Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Your basket, that which you collect, and that which you actually cook with, it's going to be blessed. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way, flee before you in 7 ways. That's pretty cool. Coming at you, and you scatter them, and they go 7 ways to get away from you. The Lord will establish you as a people holy to himself, as he has sworn to you, if you keep the commandments of the Lord your God and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of you. Folks, the word got out. The word got out in this way. He tears down walls. They just marched around. Boom, walls fall down. He would go before them, and armies that should have just decimated them, they would just destroy. And eventually, the people got the word. It's not these people, it's their God, which was the whole point, right? They weren't mighty enough to pull off what they were pulling off, but it was their God. And everyone started learning, you come against them, oh man. I mean, you can try, but no one else has really done that well against them because they just destroy everybody where they go. Verse 13. And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. And you shall only go up and not down. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, being careful to do them. If he will make you the head, not the tail. How many guys remember going to the roller skating rink and playing the game whip? It was always good to be the head, right? The person that always came up with the whip game was the guy at the front of the line. Hey, let's play whip, right? It was never the guy at the back of the line because you were going to end up in a wall somewhere, right? To the enjoyment of all of everyone else. It's good to be the head, not the tail. And I love this. And it says, if you obey the commandments of the Lord, which I command you today, being careful to do them. And that word being careful is significant. Folks, it is a focused sense of that this is serious. This is serious. Being careful. Jody has said many times about me, I'm a little bit like a bull in a china shop, okay? I go to fix things, and I have at times made things worse in my trying to fix things. Is anyone else with me on that? All right. And so in that, it's interesting what the word careful means to Jody and what careful means to me. Like when I've loaded up our furniture to move them, I thought I was being careful. Not so much. But careful for Jody, which I now get, it's taken me a few years, means be careful moving it in, moving it out, tying it up. All times be careful. Not just once be careful, all times be careful. And so in this concept, there's an all times be careful. Be aware. Be aware. Because if you lose that, it's amazing how quickly we fall. And if you do not turn aside from any of the words that I command you today to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Don't turn. Keep your focus. Run the race marked out for you. These are all New Testament scriptures. Keep your eye on the prize. Beat your body so that you will not be disqualified from the prize. Do not turn from the right to the left. Be careful what you do. Scripture, watch your doctrine carefully. Watch your steps. Live such good lives among the pagans, though they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see God's glory. These are all verses that the New Testament brings from this passage. Be careful. And then there's verse 15. Now, some of you have read ahead and you know what's coming. And I just want you to understand that we have a God that, by the way, is holy and righteous, and listen to me, and just. And you need to hear this before we begin this. And we have a God who is long-suffering. The stuff you're going to hear takes generations for him to ultimately get to the point where he goes, this is what's going to happen. This wasn't that God flew off the handle and got mad overnight. This is God being serious over generations and watching his children live in debauchery, watching his children play games with him, watching children think that we can do this thing and that God can't figure it out, and that God's not smart enough to know that I'm playing both sides of this fence. This was not something that happened overnight. This was God sending prophets, God sending judges, God sending angels to say to these guys, please, stop this. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall you be your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Now, when I say cursed, what this means is this. You do the right thing in the right way, and it turns out horribly. Good seed, good ground. Sun, water, right? And nothing grows. Cursed. See, the thing is that the people would do things that would make sense to them. But because their eyes were not on God and they took their eyes to other gods and they were doing these horrible things, then God goes, no, your ground's not going to grow. You will not be barren. You will be barren. You will not be able to have children. All of these things, there's going to be a curse. Now, we use that phrase. Some of you have lived in places where you're like, man, it just feels like God's against me, right? I feel like I'm doing everything and God's against me. What's going on? And you're going, but we don't live in the time of the Old Testament. We don't live in the time of Deuteronomy. We live in the time of Jesus. Oh, just wait. Verse 19, cursed shall you be when you come in. Cursed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will send on you curses, confusion, and frustration in all that you undertake to do until you are destroyed and perish quickly on account of the evil of your deeds, because you have forsaken me. Curse, confusion, frustration. 2 plus 2 should be 4. Nope. But God, I was good for a week. Until you are destroyed and perish quickly on account of the evil of your deeds, because you have forsaken me. The Lord will cause you to be, verse 25, the Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. Do you see what's happening here? All the ways that he wanted to bless you, now you get cursed. You want to come in and fight? Fine. You'll come in one way, they'll scatter you 7. And you shall be a horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. Before they were frightened of them because their God was so mighty. Now they're a horror because their God has devastated them. Please understand the extremes of that. Either God will be seen for his majesty and the fact that he defeated all these armies and was great and blessed them, or they will see them as a God that just not only lets them go their own way, but causes them to be a horror. Let me put it to you this way. I lived on Bookins Street in Odessa, Texas. Now, we watch a show called The Middles, and there's a family down the street from where they live that they all talk about, and we had one of those families on Bookins Street. Those kids broke into things, messed things up. I mean, they were a nightmare, right? The only time I thought my dad was going to have a fight in the middle of the street was with this family's father. It was just horrible. And I remember even as a kid going, what a horror to live in that family. Does that make sense? As a kid, I could see I had the support of my mom and my dad. We were a loving family, and I would watch what would happen. You would see the older kids, not just, like my boys do, messing around with each other, literally beating the younger kids, just beating them. It was a horror to watch this family. It was so dysfunctional. Everything was broken, everything was done, and then all of a sudden they would take their anger, and those kids would turn their anger out against the kids on the street. Does that make sense? And what would happen is that God is saying, look, I will do to you that the people around you will go, I don't want to be a part of that family. Look what he's doing to them. Verse 32. Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people while your eyes look on and fail with longing for them all day long, but you shall be helpless. Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people while your eyes look on and fail with longing for them all day long. Because of the choices of their parents, these kids are having this affliction on them. Because of the choice of their parents, these kids are carrying the weight of it, and they watch their kids and watch what's happening. And the problem is it started with them. It started with them. And there's nothing they can do. Just watch what happens to their kids. And by the way, if you're going, wow, this is pretty severe, go back and read Job. Verse 33, a nation that you have not known shall eat up the fruit of your ground and all your labors, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed continually. When we went through the book of Isaiah and we started looking at what was happening when Israel, the nation that was to the north, got destroyed and how horrific it was, and then ultimately when Babylon comes and takes the nation of Judah down, honestly, there was a sense that they were crushed and oppressed continually. And those people took all that they had created. As a matter of fact, the nations destroyed their forests, destroyed their land, pillaged, took everything with it. 34. So that you are driven mad by the sights that your eyes see. Now, folks, some of us have had that wail in the night where you're crying out to God, I'm done, I can't see anymore. And this thing is that we're hoping that our cries go to heaven and that they're not just bouncing off the ceiling. But these people started crying to God, and God goes, it's too late. That train left the station. And by the way, that train didn't leave the station until generation after generation after generation after generation after generation kept messing around with God, justifying their actions, saying it would be okay. Well, at least I went and made a sacrifice. Yeah, I realized I was with a typical prostitute last night, but I came and got my sacrifice today. Verse 36, the Lord will bring you and your king, whom you set over you, to a nation that neither you nor your fathers have known, and there you shall serve other gods of wood and stone. Babylon. Babylon. And we know the story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get up there, and they're told to bow down to the king. And they won't, right? That doesn't mean everyone else wasn't forced to. Only a few stood up. But the rest of them are now forced to worship these wood and stone images. Their king is carried off. The last king, the one that would be in line, falls under Babylon, and there's no longer a king system anymore when Babylon takes them over. Verse 44, he shall lend to you, meaning the nation, this other nation shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Folks, what's happening is this, as it goes back to this, if. And in that moment of if is everything. You have blessings. They were laid out before them. They were told them, and they even tasted them for a while. Verse 45. All these curses shall come upon you and pursue you and overtake you till you are destroyed, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes that he commanded you. Notice these words. These curses shall come upon you and pursue you. That will become very important at the very end of this message. These curses will come upon you and pursue you and overtake you till you're destroyed. And by the way, these curses are motivated by God. Motivated by God. Verse 46. They shall be a sign and a wonder against you and your offspring forever. Verse 47, because you did not serve the Lord your God with joyfulness and gladness of heart because of the abundance of all things. There we go. Go back and watch. Go back and read the book of Joshua. The problem, honestly, was not that they went into the promised land and things were bad. No, they went into the promised land and things were good, right? They planted, it grew. They brought two animals together, two sheep together, flocks. They're having kids left and right. And what happens is, as they had the abundance of all things, guess what they didn't need anymore? It's God. How quickly we forget that what we have is from Him. How quickly we think that, look what I've done. Look what I've created. Look what I've accomplished. And before we know it, all things around us start to truly take our ground out from underneath us. All these things that are good, they're not bad. But they start taking these things from us. And that's where the downfall began. Because then their eyes came off of God, started looking around. Oh, how they worship their God. That looks fun. Oh, what if we just try? God, I'm just going to, yeah. Because you've been there. You've been there. Have you ever listened to yourself, talked to yourself, and said, this is really stupid, but I'm still going to listen to myself? Let me say that again. Have you ever listened to yourself, talked to yourself, but as you listen to yourself, said, this is really stupid, but I'm still going to listen to myself? Like your arguments aren't even good, right? They're not even good. You know it ends in bad. You know this is horrible. You're like, yeah, but it's me, and this time, you're what? Have you ever found out that if you listen to someone say the things you said to yourself, you would look at them and say, you're crazy, but because it's said in your own head, you go, yes. Now, we're going to skip, but I'm not going to skip the part that some of you know is in here. Verse 52. Listen to this. Listen to this. They shall besiege you in all your towns until your high and fortified walls in which you trusted come down throughout all your land. And they shall besiege you in all your towns throughout all your land which the Lord your God has given you. I love that line. Do you understand? They will besiege you and tear down the walls in which you trusted. See, at some point, we do this. We say, God, I trust you with everything, but I do have a backup plan. That now is in first position. I'm going to trust in my savings. I'm going to trust in my 401k. I'm going to trust in my retirement. I'm going to trust in my house. I'm going to trust in all these things. And what happens is God goes, you don't even understand. By the way, some of you in this very room overnight watched your 401ks not too long ago go to nothing. That was your retirement. That's what you trusted in, and it was gone. We watched when Katrina hit. We watched all these plans that people had, and they were gone. And we think we figured it out. We think we have it covered. We think if we have a diverse portfolio, if we think that we have everything done, that we can cover whatever calamity comes. When the earthquake hit Japan and we watched the tsunami hit Japan, and then we went, oh, the tsunami was one thing, but the reactors at the nuclear center are another thing. It was interesting when they said, we thought of everything but that. Remember that? We thought of everything. We had fail-safes. We had triple. We had redundancy everywhere except for that. And I'm telling you, whatever you trust in, whatever you put your hope in, it is not the same as putting your hope in God. Period. They shall besiege you in all your towns until your high and fortified walls in which you trusted come down throughout all your land, and they shall besiege you in all your towns throughout all your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. So let me tell you what happens here. By the way, this does take place. He warns them, when this siege comes, you will turn to cannibalism to save your own souls. And he uses this phrase, the fairest man, meaning the person that you would look at and go, I would put my hope into him. The fairest woman, the woman you go, that is the kindest, hardest woman there. They will eat their children to stay alive. And what's hard for us when we read this is when the people of Israel started eating their children, you think God would say, okay, that's it, that's enough. And God says, no, it's not. Because we didn't get here overnight. You continually turned your back on me. You continually kept acting like this was no big deal. And the fact is, you're going to pay for this. And God watched his children eat their children. They became so hungry. Why? Because their enemies came around them, cut off every supply, and basically starved them out. And God said, it's fine with me. This is my wrath. This is the curse. And by the way, I told them before we started this. I was playing a board game one time, and we had to have this thing, what are the house rules? Because everyone plays this game differently. Believe me, there have been fist fights over this game. I'll leave it out. But if there's not house rules, right? Because someone's got to say what the house rules. And God goes, no, these aren't just the house rules. These are the blessings and these are the curses. Verse 62. Whereas you are as numerous as the stars of heaven, you shall be left in few number because you did not obey the voice of the Lord your God. When they got into the promised land, they became so prosperous. I mean, literally, the exponential number of the Israelites growing was out of control. I mean, God was letting just families have 7, 8 to 12 kids. I mean, just, you get the numbers, folks, it goes quickly, right? By the time Babylon takes them over, they are down to such a small number that God only keeps a remnant together. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Verse 63. And as the Lord took delight in doing, hold on, let me first, folks, this verse is going to be hard for some of you. You're going to have to wrestle with this because this is not what anyone else has said to you, because this verse will never end up on a bumper sticker. And as the Lord took delight in doing you good and multiplying you, so the Lord will take delight in bringing you ruin upon you and destroying you. And you shall be plucked off the land, and you are entering to take possession of it. You mean that God took delight? And the answer is he did. When you offer people such blessings, such peace, and they go and trample underneath that, and not only go so far as to just do wrong, but to truly go against you, to truly, in all essence, give you the bird. God goes, okay, here we go. And yes, he delights in this. And some of you are going, oh, praise God, we have the New Testament. I wouldn't say that too quickly. Verse 66, your life shall hang in doubt before you. Night and day you shall be in dread and have no assurance of life. To live every day that this could be it. Every day it could be done. Every day, this is the last breath I'm going to take. Every day, that dread, that weight. Watch this. This is probably the most, it just speaks, because some of us have been here. In the morning you shall say, if only it were evening. And at evening you shall say, if only it were morning, because of the dread that your heart shall feel and the sights that your eyes shall see. As soon as you wake up, you're praying that it's time to go to bed. And as soon as you go to bed, you're praying it's time to get up. And that cycle goes on because there is no end to this. Now, do you think God's being serious about this? Truly, church, is God being serious about this? He's not playing a game. This is reality. He says, you have all the blessings. It took him 14 verses to tell the blessings, and we've taken all the rest of these verses to say, this is what happens when you don't hear this. Verse 68, this passage blows me away. And the Lord will bring you back in ships to Egypt, a journey that I promised that you should never make again, and there you shall offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but there will be no buyer. Why is this passage this way? It has to do with the word ships. You see, when he brought them out of Egypt, he brought them out of might and power. He crossed through the Red Sea, brought them where he gave them, honestly, this mountain trembling where they got the 10 Commandments. And then he would walk before them as a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, and he would feed them manna, and he would walk with them, and with power and majesty, he brought them into the promised land. But when you go back to Egypt, you're going to go back the common way, just on a ship. And when you get there, you're going to be so decimated that when you say, please, Egypt, take me back as a slave, they're going to look at you and say, you have no value to me. None. Israel, that mighty nation, that powerhouse, that thing that took all of our gold and left one day, when they come back and you're like, please, just take me back as a slave, they'll say, you are worthless. I think Moses was trying through God to make a point. 68 verses, 14 of them telling us the blessings, the rest of us telling that if we don't understand that we don't have a God that just says, oh, if you mess up, I'll just let life happen to you. We have a God that says he took delight, listen to me, took delight in them being plucked from the earth and watched them eat their children. And some of you are struggling with a God that would do that. But I'm telling you, when you understand his righteousness and his holiness, and some of you think, listen to me, some of you think that because Jesus came, God changed. The loving act was that he sent his son to die for you. But the God is the God of the Old Testament, is the God of the New Testament. You know what's changed? Not the God of the Old Testament. You know what's changed? Is that his son washes me and allows me to be in his presence. His son pours grace upon me and allows me to be in his presence. His son makes it possible for me to be in the presence of a very, very jealous God. And you're supposed to, woo, good. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as in the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. And that's where most people stop reading that chapter. For those of you that don't realize this, I've said it now, I don't know how many times in the book of Deuteronomy, God does not lower the bar with Jesus, he raises the bar with Jesus. For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there is no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. You come to Christ. You give him your life, and he goes, this is what it means to follow me. And you say, that's great. I'm still going to go my own way. Love you. God goes, I don't have anything else for you. What I have for you is I've died for you and your submission to my will. If you say, God has got to accept me in my sin, God says this. But a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, how much worse punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Spirit of grace? To take grace and spit on it is a problem. To take his Son who dies for you, to give you life, to give you hope, and honestly trash him by your actions is an issue. To then make a mockery of the blood that was shed for you is a problem of great extent. And he goes on to say, how much worse? Now, clarification. I have a struggle with sin, and there's something in my life, and I'm working through it, but yet I find myself with a contrite heart, and I'm struggling, and I fall before God. That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about this is what God says and blatantly walking against it because for some reason you think you have a way out. And if it wasn't true for the people of Israel, it's not true for us. It's not true for us. And you would say, oh, but God is a God of grace. God is a God of grace. No, God is a God of justice. And he gives grace, but if you make a mockery of that grace, knowing what it is, you are then playing with fire. And by the way, if you don't think there are curses still, you'd be wrong. I've watched people who have followed God, and yet they're going to keep this one area, and all of a sudden things just start to dismantle in their lives, and they're coming back going, I don't understand why things are going wrong. Really? For we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, and again the Lord will judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. It is a fearful thing. I know we don't like reading this verse in the New Testament, but it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God because let me tell you something. He takes seriously that his Son died on the cross for you. He takes seriously that his Spirit extends you grace. He takes seriously that his blood was shed for you. And for you to turn around and make a mockery of it sounds very much like what we're dealing with in chapter 28. Then to be surprised that our lives are not turning out how we expect them to be becomes a little bit crazy. Because at the beginning he said this. Jesus says, come, follow me. Take up your cross daily. Kill the old self. Do not let that. Crucify that. Nail it to the tree. Do not go back to that. Lukewarm, I will spit you out. It's not that the scriptures don't say these things. It's because they say them the way they do. We just read the verses around them and act like that God's not being that serious. 1 Timothy 6, 11 and 12. The guys who went to the summit should know this verse by heart by now, since we said it so many times. Because here's the thing. Remember I said that it said that the curses will pursue you and overtake you and destroy you? But as for you, O man of God, and ladies, you can say, O woman of God. But as for you, O man of God, flee these things. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, and gentleness. Pursue. 2 key words, flee and pursue. Flee and pursue. Because in this, we have a God that is righteous and holy, and he says, listen, this is what I've done. All I'm asking you to do is have the blessings that I want to give you, and he wants to bless you. If. Because that's that comes down to, doesn't it? Hey, God, I want to be blessed by you, but I'm going to go do my own thing. I want to be blessed by you, but I hope this isn't a big deal. But I want to be blessed by you. And God goes, I'm not playing games. My son's life, eternity is on the line. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called and about which you made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. Be careful. 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 We have got to be so careful. Because all these things around us give us the impression that everything is okay. And the problem is when we touch them and our lives begin, we're going, what's going on? And God goes, because those things come with curses. To ignore me comes with problems. To love this world more than me means not only is God, let me just say this to you, and please hear me on this. There is a hell. There is a hell. And God did everything he could to have you not go there. But if that's your choice, he is going to allow you to go. We have to understand that we have a God of righteousness who is still the same God of the Old Testament, of the New Testament. And yes, we have grace through Jesus Christ. And yes, we have mercy through Jesus Christ. And yet, if we're going to play a game and think that we can somehow beat the deal and we're going to get around it, or we're going to find a loophole, or we're going to do something else, then we are going to be sorely mistaken. And when things start to happen and we watch what's happening in our families, and we start what's happening to our possessions, and we start what's happening with things around us, and we are saying, I wish it was morning, in the morning I wish it was night. Don't ever, ever say you weren't warned. Because his word states how truly, truly he loves us. And yet is going to do that which is right. Folks, if I could say anything to you, you are going to have in these next few chapters blessings and curses. And Moses states it this way: choose life or death. And still the same question comes before us through Jesus Christ. Choose life or choose death. And today you can make that choice. Today you can make that choice. Because he's not kidding around. He wasn't kidding around when he created us, and he wasn't kidding around when he sent Israel to the promised land, and he wasn't kidding around when he sent his son, and he definitely is not going to kid around when he comes back the second time. And our only hope is at the feet of Jesus. Let's pray. Father,